Andrew Young, politician. Congratulations.
Hope y'all are doing well. We had to drag our kids off the beach, so we're a few minutes behind. Yep. I started this with just as kind of my mom was an English teacher and my dad was a minister, and neither one would have ever thought that I would have written a book other than something including crayons. And I wrote this book when my father was dying, and wrote it 2 years after my best friend, who happened to be a presidential candidate, who y'all might have heard of, and waited as long as I could for him to tell the truth. And my father died of an Alzheimer's related issue, and wrote it partially for him and partially for my wife, in great part for my wife. She's not in here, so I can't get hit with a frying pan. But a great deal for my kids, so that one of these days, hopefully, they'll be able to understand the decisions that I made, right or wrong. And I think anybody who's read the book, I make no bones about the fact that I got sucked up into the world of presidential politics, and unfortunately dragged my family along with it. And a lot of the folks that read the book find it hard to believe, like the folks who are now chasing after me, trying to make it into a Hollywood movie. It's almost hard to believe it's true. There are so many bigger-than-life characters in it, from Bunny Mellon, who's one of them. She's 98 years old and is, if you met her, you wouldn't believe her. I met her at 11 o'clock in the morning, and by 1:30, I was falling under the table drinking Bloody Marys. And she's 98 years old. And she'll sit there and regale you with stories of America's Cup and Roosevelt and Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart, and playing checkers on a life-size chess set with the Queen of Spain. I mean, and then you go back to the commonplace, like my family was the 12th of 13 of a tobacco farmer from Western North Carolina. And so it's one of these things that a lot of folks have tried to focus on the tawdry aspects of it, which are easy to do. But what it is, it tells about the tawdry aspects, but it tells you about what present national politics are in the United States. And I think y'all in Florida have seen probably more than any of us, except for maybe possibly Washington. And so with that, I'll read a little bit. I apologize for my crayon rendering, but it's the best I could do. One of the things that a lot of people think that this was kind of a vengeful book and all this kind of stuff. What this book is about is when you read it, it's almost like an arc. He, in the first 5 years that I worked for him, he was they had just lost a son in a tragic car accident. He was an inspiring person to work for. I've often said, since things have gone sour, he was everything you could possibly want in a presidential candidate, except for a platform and ethics. Because he had a photographic memory. He was charismatic as all get out. You could see him sometimes when, because he would give the same speech 6 or 8 times a day. You could see him sometimes, and he would come across like an empty suit. You could see him a few minutes later, and he'd give the same speech, and he could sell ice to Eskimos. I mean, he was an incredibly gifted, and some of my favorite memories was when we would we would do this big thing up in Boston or New York, and then we would go to Polk County in North Carolina, which there's about as many people in Polk County as there are in this room right now. And he would sit there and talk to 10 people for 2 hours, and it was incredible. And I would say honestly, part of the reason that I did some of the foolish things that I did was that I believed that I was trying to save, in some warped way, I was trying to save their family from going through what my family had gone through. We've been working for Edwards since 1999. We had been through Gore. We had been through 2004. And by the 2008 election, this is, Riel had moved into our house, the mistress had moved into our house in September of 2006. Seven, thank you. And and she, when the senator approached us about it, it was such a, you know, it's like asking somebody, I'm loyal to a fault. And there are like 15 things on here. One, this was my job. This was how I supported my family. This is how I'd done it for a decade. Second, this was the presidency of the United States. And I honestly, honest to God, at that point, I did not think that Barack Obama, he asked me while we were at a PetSmart buying a turtle aquarium, if you can believe that. I, honest to God, did not think that Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton could win. I didn't. And you have to, it's hard now, but you have to mentally take yourself back, and I don't know if you're Republican, independent, apolitical, whatever, but you have to take yourself back, me as a Democrat, take yourself back to the mindset of Democrats in 2006, where we literally thought that Karl Rove was going to rule the world forever. And John Edwards calls me up, and then later on that night calls up Sherry and Riel, and he makes the pitch about Iraq, good versus evil, Democrats are never going to win the White House again, and this is our chance. This is what we've been working for in 17 hours a day for 8 years at that point. That all went through, but then the closing argument, and the one that closed it for all of us, I think, was that Elizabeth was about to die of cancer. She had weeks, if not months, to live. And I challenge him. You know, I'm not going to be stupid enough to raise my hand, ask people to raise hands. I've never done this before. If one of your best friends, your best friend, came to you and said, and say it's your boss too, but you're close friends, says, look, I've really screwed up. I've had an affair on my wife. We haven't had the best relationship in years, and he and I had fought over the bad relationship that John and Elizabeth had for years. If one of your close friends came to you and said, my wife is going to die in the next month and a half, will you cover, and this is going to be not just on the local news, this is going to be on worldwide news, will you take the bullet for me for the short term? Because what his thing was, Andrew, nobody cares about an affair between two staffers. Nobody's even going to cover it. And what's miraculous about this, what's so crazy about this is, nobody did. It was all over the internet. Somebody says to me, how did you think it would work? It did work. We made this announcement in December 17th. It worked until he got caught July the 22nd, the next year, at the Beverly Hilton. He was the leading contender to be Vice President or Attorney General. People say, how could it work? It did work. These billionaires made us disappear. And so I'll do this. I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to raise their hand or whatever. If your best friend came up to you and said, my wife's about to die, will you take a bullet for me for the short term? Would anybody do that?
Not to their wife, no.
Not to their wife? Okay, that's fair answer.
Going to be like the President of the United States.
Well, I understand that. You know, if we had 8 hours to make the decision, and I did.